Welcome to our podcast, Living Our Best with Memory Loss. What makes this podcast unique is that three of its hosts, Bob, Dennis, and Sue Ann, have a memory loss diagnosis. The purpose of this podcast is for people to share their experiences with cognitive decline. It is not to provide medical advice. We are not doctors, and we stress that what might have worked for one person might not work for others. If anything you hear on this program inspires you to explore treatment options, we recommend you do so in consultation with your physician. The following podcast is a continuation of a previous episode. Please consider listening to last week's episode as well to catch our full conversation with Dr. Catherine Madison.
Welcome back to our podcast, Living Our Best with Memory Loss. We are pleased to welcome today Dr. Catherine Madison from San Francisco. She is a neurologist who specializes in the holistic care of those with dementia. She is the founding director of the Dolby Brain Health Center. Dr. Madison joined us last week for the basics of dementia, and she's back today to discuss a term called anosognosia. So I'm going to turn it over to you, our expert, Dr. Madison.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being with everyone again.
Thank you.
And I do like talking about anosognosia. Anosognosia is a medical term. It was actually coined about 100 years ago, and it's used to define the lack of awareness that an individual has over their particular problem. It's seen a lot in psychiatry and accepted in psychiatry that patients cannot see their illness. And it's now being studied in dementia. And we understand now that anosognosia, or lack of insight in dementia, relates specifically to damage in the brain, which has been caused by a neurodegenerative process or other illnesses, such as stroke or even multiple sclerosis, could cause this, affecting the brain. We saw on our prior podcast some images of white matter tracts in the brain and some MR images of the white matter lesions or spots that can develop normally with aging and are accelerated in certain conditions. And anosognosia is when there are disruptions in the brain, so we lose our capacity for self-referential thinking. It's a lack of insight, and that's very different than denial. Anosognosia, or this lack of insight, is poorly understood by doctors. So I think it's really important that patients and families understand it. It can lead to a delay in diagnosis. If a family member can't see there's a problem, it can be challenging to get them in to see a doctor. Normalizing the process of going in and getting an evaluation can help overcome that. Anosognosia can be present in a mild cognitive impairment, and it is present in almost 90% of cases of a dementia once it becomes severe. So clearly, this lack of insight in anosognosia relates to more and more extensive damage to the brain.
This is very close to home for me. I know a lot of people know our story, mine and Bob's. For the longest time, Bob, well, and I don't even know today if you are really still aware of issues, paying bills, time issues. I think time now you're starting to see that you do struggle with time and with scheduling. Mm-hmm. But over the course of probably 10 years, he did not see that there were any issues. I couldn't convince him that he wasn't paying the bills, it was somebody else's fault, or that he was late, or that cabinet doors were being left open and drawers open, and just very unusual behaviors that were not like Bob. And would that be an example
Absolutely,
of
yes.
anosognosia?
Yeah. And so that's why the general public getting a better understanding of it is so important.
Well, as far as that goes, if you have no recollection of these problems, then how would you know to go? I mean,
I'm
she
not
was
sure you
seeing
would.
them, but I wasn't.
Right. And so I'm not sure that you could recognize the need to go, but by other people, and in this case specifically, Lori understanding that you could have this condition, it alters the way that she approaches the problem. And that's why I like to do education around anosognosia so much. It can help people around you, Bob, communicate better with you.
Right.
Well, and I really appreciate Bob and Lori's openness and willingness to share this and their story, because I don't think you're alone. And you can see that it can cause great harm in a family if someone, because of the actual brain illness, is not able to be aware of
Yes.
it. Is very resistant to testing or anything. It's also, they're very resistant to trusting that you're seeing anything different. They
That's
think, you
right.
know,
Right.
and so
Yes.
then
That's
the
right.
person that loves you is sort of over here alone, worrying, Googling, Dr.
Yes.
Google about what could this be.
Yes.
And then the other person is just thinking, I don't know what they're so upset about.
Because they can't see themselves.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
I really appreciate your openness and
Yeah,
willingness.
I don't think you
because-
liked me for a number of years because I was quite the nag.
I always liked
But you're
you.
back to liking me now, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay.
So I think one of the best strategies for communicating around and with anosognosia is first recognizing it's there, and then in your mind coming to an acceptance that you've got two realities here. So the person who's had a change in their brain and they have cognitive impairment, they perceive the world differently than you do. They're in a different reality. So recognize that you've got two realities there. Identify what the common goal is that you want,
Mhm.
and say it's around medication, say it's around managing medication. And these are all tricky, so I'm just giving you one sort of an example here, but say it's around managing medication, and your loved one can't remember to take their medication. So your goal is to get them to take their medicine daily. You don't want to be always nagging them, because nobody likes that, and make it more of a joint effort.
Well, Dr. Madison, it's funny you'd say that because my mom, who has dementia, she and her significant other take their medication together in the morning. He makes it very much, we're taking our vitamins, and it's sort of a morning ritual that they do together, but it's her medications, and without him saying, here, Rosalind, take these, it's time to take them. They just make it a thing that they take everything together.
And that's exactly where I was going to go with it.
Yeah.
You could make it so that you've got even like one of those smart medicine dispensing kits.
What she has,
I
yep.
only take thyroid and an allergy medicine, but even some days I'm like, okay, did I take those? So that, Lori, you're probably, even if you're just taking multivitamins, that you each have one of those fancy little dispensing kits. They've got timers on them. They've got lights, all sorts of stuff, and say, look, I found this. Let's do this. I can never remember to take my medicines or my vitamins. And so I went ahead and I got two of these so we can both do it together. And so
Yes.
that's how you try to work around those problems.
Right. Great advice.
Well, are there any other things about anosognosia that you would want the public and patients to know about?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that anosognosia is very, very problematic because it not only helps people from getting a diagnosis and treatment, it also is a barrier for people making a plan. I'm a big advocate of individuals writing their last chapter of their life story. And I say to people, if you don't write it, then someone else will. And in our country, that usually means the medical conveyor belt of tests and treatment will simply sweep you along, even if you have said to your family, I don't ever want to end up a vegetable or something close to it, unless you have really taken steps to outline what you want and what you don't want. Your family is going to end up in a whole lot of pain seeing things done to you that in their hearts they know you would not have wanted. So here, anosognosia, I think, is a major obstacle.
That's a really good point. I know that
Yeah.
I created my will, my durable power of attorney, the healthcare attorney, a power of attorney. When I became single, and now that I'm married again, we both have it. And
Mhm.
because I felt like it was one of the last gifts I could give to my kids and my family and my loved ones, that they would know exactly what I wanted. And in a time of grief or stress or sadness, they're not having to make those decisions. It's already been this,
Mhm.
and they can get comfort of
Right.
knowing this is what mom wanted. And I just think that it is a loving thing to do for our loved ones and our families.
You said that perfectly. If I can share a couple pictures here, um, I think we all imagine a peaceful ending, passing away in a favorite chair or dying in our sleep is really the best type of an ending I think any of us could imagine. And what we fear the most,
Feared
the
reality.
feared reality, is that we're going to end up only a part of our former selves stuck in a care home. So that's a very real potential ending for all of us, unless we very clearly and lovingly write out what we would want and what we don't want. First off, I think having the conversation is a challenge. I've had my kids say to me, Mom, not everybody's as comfortable discussing death over dinner as you are. Just my nature. What can I say?
Boy, I wish you were local. You'd be so much fun. Okay.
I think that would be the most difficult part of any relationship is to sit down and discuss that, I'm going to be dying in 10 years or 15 years, and this is what we got to do. And I think personally that's very difficult.
This is always a difficult conversation to have, Bob. I agree with you completely. Except we know that we will have an exit. That's the only certainty we have when we're born. We don't know if it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or 25 years from now. So having a conversation and trying to make a game of it is the best way to approach it. I like to recommend a card game called Go Wish. These cards are available in multiple languages and culturally appropriate for each of those languages. And you generally buy a set of them in different colors. You can do this at the dinner table. You can do it over Zoom. You sort through these cards about what would be the most important thing to you at the end of life. And the cards have things such as not being short of breath, to you've got cards saying you don't want to die, you want to die at home, you don't want to die alone. You've got cards saying, well, there's a card that says to have my family with you, and there's another card that says that you don't want your family with you. You go through these cards and you sort them into three piles. The pile of what is the most important for you, and I would say probably to be free from pain is something that everybody would want to put as their most important pile there. To remember personal accomplishments, I don't know that I need to remember those at the end of life, so I could put that in my discard pile. To be kept clean, that's pretty important, but it's not most important, so I'd put that in my middle pile. In going through this process, you learn a lot about yourself, but you learn a lot about your partner and your friend too. What is important to me at the end of my life? So this is a fabulous conversation starter. Would you be okay with doing this, Bob?
I think I would.
Is
I mean,
Wow,
we've
that's
done a lot of other things. We've done the all the legal paperwork. Uh, um, what's the other name? Which other
you've
one?
done a will and you've
Yeah,
done power of
power of
attorney.
attorney, and there was another.
I think I made you sign a paper that you wouldn't look at my American Express bill. That if that if I was passing away, that you would not let. Okay,
Well, good.
okay.
so. This is a really, really great
That
conversation starter.
is great.
Um,
That is so great.
I think it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
I also like to put an addendum in those advanced directives because most advanced healthcare directives deal with how long you want to be connected to machines, or if the doctors feel that there's no chance of a meaningful survival, it's okay to unhook you and such.
Right.
But when you have a neurodegenerative illness that very, very slowly erodes your independence, your scope of life can become smaller and smaller. If you get to that point, like in the picture I showed of the people in the wheelchairs in the hallway, where you're dependent completely on others for care. So I've developed an addendum to my advanced healthcare directive that is specific for neurocognitive impairment or a dementia. And what I say in this directive is that if I am ever in a state where I am no longer able to fully control my life and I'm no longer in charge of things, I want you to limit the amount of medical testing and treatment that you do. And I want you to limit it very severely. What I say here is that I wish to remove all the barriers to a natural, peaceful, and timely death, preferably in my home, and no CPR under any circumstances. I want to prioritize comfort care. I don't want any disease-directed care that would prolong my living or my dying. By saying that, I'm actually meaning, which I have lower down on the slide there, that I don't want any tests or treatment that would result in meaningless care, given my desire not to prolong my living or dying. So that if I'm impaired enough that someone else is helping me manage to a significant extent, I mean, keeping track of bills and a lot of those minor things, that's minor. But if someone is really needing to help me on a day-to-day basis, if I come down with a pneumonia, I don't even want a chest x-ray and I don't want antibiotics. In years past in medicine, we called pneumonia an old man's best friend. And that may still be true. If someone's life is really compromised with a neurodegenerative illness, their independence has been shackled, and they come down with a pneumonia, that could be an opportunity to make an exit. And using comfort care and opioids, if necessary, for pain is okay. So I created this addendum and I signed it. I had my husband witness it, and I sent it to all three of our grown daughters. We've chosen our middle daughter to be the medical decision maker because everyone in the family agrees she'd pull the plug first.
I love that.
So after I sent this directive to all three of our daughters, the middle daughter sent an email back that simply stated, "Kind of morbid, Mom, but thanks."
Yeah.
My father did the same thing for us, and I'm grateful to this day
Yeah.
that my dad did that too. It took so much of the burden off of us.
It lifts a huge
Huge
burden.
burden.
So I would
Yes.
ask everyone to expand what they have in their advanced directive
Great
to put
advice.
something in there for neurocognitive impairment. In the one which I use formally, I have in my introduction that I understand what
an emotional and financial burden caring for a loved one with a dementia can be, and I don't want my family to go through that. They saw me go through it with my mother,
Mm-hmm.
and it's painful. It's
Terrible.
painful for other family members to see.
Well, that is so selfless of you and so admirable. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Anosognosia, as I mentioned earlier, is being studied more. Part of that relates to the great tools we have for neuroimaging. And so now scientists can see all these different connections between regions of the brain, and they're working out networks. And that's all very exciting and fun. And so they're starting to discover which parts of the brain and networks are associated with anosognosia. And recently I was reading someone talking about sensory anosognosia, and that people with the dementia may not experience sensation. That could be pain, but it got my mind to thinking about hunger, because it's very common when people have more severe cognitive impairment, they tend to stop eating.
Mhm.
I usually thought that this was related to an Alzheimer's process and that people are simply forgetting to eat. But perhaps it is actually related to anosognosia, and the brain is not aware of the sensation of hunger. And so how we treat or care, how we care for individuals with dementia might include considering anosognosia and lack of eating as part of the dementia process itself. Perhaps with not eating, the brain is sending a signal to the body, hey, we're closing up shop here. And rather than engaging our natural tendency to nurture and comfort and give them more calories, have them drink Ensure, and eventually start feeding them with a spoon, perhaps it's better to look at this as part of the natural process of the brain shutting down, which does lead to a shorter life, because as people lose weight, their immune system becomes weak. They are more prone to illness and infection, and that could be part of an earlier exit strategy.
So interesting.
Makes
Boy,
sense.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's a lot of information there.
Uh,
It's kind of hard to take it all in.
But so helpful, so insightful, and I'm going to go buy us a deck of cards. Okay.
Definitely.
It's not as good as strip poker, but that's
Oh,
okay.
And there's the Bob we know and love.
That's
Okay,
right.
And
That's
Bob's
right,
back.
yeah. We want to thank you, Dr. Madison, for your time and your expertise and your kindness. I can only imagine how special it would be to be one of your patients and their families. And so thank you again so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a treat chatting with all of you, and I hope we can share this information broadly.
Yep.
That is
Thank
our
you so
goal.
much.
We will do our very
Absolutely.
best.
Thank you.